Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Moss, and welcome to this Fireside Chat on Observability with myself, Caitlin Halla, and Mike Simon. To begin, I wanted to summarize some of the key insights from our Fireside Chat with Mike and Caitlin. And if you'd like to watch the full Fireside Chat, be sure to stick around after the summary. The first topic that we discussed was comparing monitoring versus observability. Monitoring indicates what's going wrong, but observability provides insights into why issues occur. In addition, observability allows you to create custom and meaningful metrics about your business. An example of one of these custom metrics might be how many orders have failed to be submitted on my e-commerce site over the last hour. Next, we talked about the most common challenges that teams face when trying to implement observability. Making cultural changes in an organization is often way more difficult than implementing technical changes. And it's better to shift your observability solution left in the development cycle instead of trying to retrofit it after the fact. Nobody likes getting email blasts of automated alerts that are not actionable or meaningful, so it's important to put time and effort in creating valuable alerts. We also talked about the best practices of tool rationalization. Implementing proof of concepts of a candidate tool is one of the most helpful methods of assessing a tool's value in your organization. You should also make sure that the tool you're assessing aligns with future business needs. Possibly one of the most important aspects of tool rationalization is evaluating cost. And this is especially important when you're deciding whether or not you want to host a tool on premises and manage it yourself, as opposed to purchasing a SaaS solution and allowing a company or a vendor to manage it. You want to make sure that you're tracking key MTTX metrics, and that after deploying the tool, you see improvements in those metrics. Adoption is also a critical part of tool rationalization, and after deploying a tool, it's important to monitor the usage of that tool in your organization. We then discuss the importance of OpenTelemetry. OpenTelemetry, or OTel for short, provides a universal observability language that makes it easy to collaborate within and across organizations. And since it's a vendor-agnostic tool, it allows you to have full ownership over your data. I then asked Caitlin and Mike about the trends that they're seeing in observability. And as you might have already guessed, AI was at the top of the list. Integrating artificial intelligence into observability solutions is a top priority for many organizations. And AI is enabling engineers to perform faster troubleshooting and root cause analysis. Finally, I asked Caitlin and Mike about lessons learned from their career. It's important to be the change you want to see in your organization and proactively resolve issues before they have an impact on the business. Staying true to agile methodology by making small, iterative improvements over time. And finally, building trust in the organization by retrospecting on mistakes and being transparent about what went wrong and what can be changed moving forward. Now that we've done a high-level overview, you can stay tuned to watch the full Fireside Chat. All right, thanks everybody for joining this Fireside Chat. Today's topic is what is observability, and I'm joined by Mike and Caitlin. Would you guys mind introducing yourself? We'll start with Caitlin.
Sure. I'm Caitlin Halla. I'm a software engineer here at Splunk. And what that means is I get to research technologies, how to use them, how to integrate them with Splunk Observability Cloud. And then I get to share what I learn with the greater Splunk community to help others learn and grow and build their observability practices.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Hey, sorry about that. Hey, Mike Simon here. Been with Splunk for about 2.5 years, and I'm a staff developer evangelist for observability, which really means that, I take my passion and work with the rest of the team here at Splunk to really evangelize and get the word out around observability, get more people interested in it, and get the hype going. Super proud to be here, or maybe I won't say that, but
Awesome.
I think.
Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, you got it.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for the introductions. And yeah, so today I wanted to bring you two on so that we could talk about observability and what observability means to you. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to ask y'all a few questions around your experience of observability and where you think observability is headed. So I'm going to just jump right in. You've already introduced yourself and as well as your current roles at Splunk. And I want to ask you, I'll start with Caitlin. How did you pivot into focusing on observability in your career?
Yeah, so I started out as a software engineer, and my first real experience involved a lot of fragmented tooling around observability. We had Kibana logs, we had CloudWatch. We were manually going in and watching SQS to make sure all the messages went through, and it was tedious. It was disjointed, and there was a lot of institutional knowledge around that. So after that role, I moved over to a software engineering position that was focused on observability, and immediately saw the benefits of a unified observability solution, and the positive impact that it had on the teams and our customers. And it totally changed the game and improved reliability and basically just made everyone's lives easier and better.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Mike, could you also provide some insight?
Sure. So I came through a little bit different path than Caitlin, and I started off in an IT operations role with the large battery manufacturer in upstate New York. And one of the things that I did is I had a pretty unique opportunity to join a new organization and join their monitoring engineering team at the time. And when I joined that team, it was new to me. I made that transition in my career, kind of made that choice. Was I gonna continue down that systems administration route, or was I gonna kind of double down on the monitoring? And if it's not obvious, I took the monitoring route and kind of built my career on that. So started off as a monitoring engineer. Kind of a lot of larger organizations have this problem, many tools, many admins, bringing those teams centrally together. And when I started, it was very tools focused and technology focused, and I saw a great opportunity to really make it more business aligned. And there was a little bit of leadership churn that was occurring in the organization. So I took that opportunity to really start talking about how do we ingrain monitoring into our deployment processes and things like that. Really picked up on it and enjoyed it. I got a unique opportunity down here in Orlando, Florida, to work with a large restaurant organization and helping lead their observability maturity, kind of coming from this distributed tooling approach to really a centralized organization that's managing it more like platform engineering. Then I took an even greater role in the leadership with a large entertainment group down here in Florida and managed their observability operations. And that was related to managing like third-party providers as well as architecting the next gen. And then took on most recently a role as a senior director of observability at a large IT research firm, and led their center of excellence as it related to kind of going from like a monolithic applications into an application modernization where we were migrating not only to the cloud but to microservices. And so had a lot of hands-on experience with kind of those challenges associated with bringing an enterprise to the next modern era, and then understanding, oh my gosh, we're there. What did we do? And kind of undoing some of that and getting us back to a normal state. And did some cool stuff with Splunk, and then that's how I wound up at Splunk. So
very cool.
That's
Sure, yeah, but I'm curious to hear Mike's take as well. So I often hear the phrase monitoring tells you that something is wrong, and observability tells you why it's wrong. And I interpret this as monitoring is the concrete data. So, like, is CPU spiking? Is throughput low? Okay, good to know. What actionable insight can we take on that? And this is where observability comes in. So how are the metrics correlated to the functionality or application environment as a whole? What's the root cause of these issues? Beyond that, an observability practice practice before even metrics are even collected. Like, which metrics do we collect? What are we going to provide from our metrics? So what are the actionable insights and the best information that we can provide on the health of our applications and customer experience? And observability doesn't end there with the metrics, logs, traces that show us that our services environment is down or customers are being impacted. It continues all the way through to who's notified of these errors, who's picking up the pages, jumping in to resolve the issues. What does that process look like? If that makes sense. But I also, want to hear what Mike has to say about this.
Awesome. Thank
Well,
you.
the pressure's on. The pressure's on for me. But, when I think about, I think a lot of times when we get asked this question, the buzzwordy word salad comes out. And, I agree with that word salad for the most part, that, monitoring really is best summed up is telling you what is wrong, and observability gives you the tools and understanding to understand why something's gone wrong. In my real world hands-on experience, coming in, like I mentioned earlier, as a monitoring engineer, the mindset is a lot different. Monitoring is about, I know these things can happen, like the common things like static thresholds around disk and specific technology, whether that be host databases or some application services. And I think observability, on the other hand, is really coined more terms around the scope of that, whether that be metrics, logs, and traces to get that comprehensive visibility. So you're not just talking about it from a tooling perspective or the vendor of the day. It's more around, I know to be observable, I need these various pillars of observability to achieve that. And once you go after that, you do it. I think the other thing is that a lot of times, in my practical experience, we don't know why it broke, right? And so you may know in hindsight, but a lot of times is making sure you have that data readily available and you're collecting. And I think the delicate balance on observability versus monitoring is you want to collect and observe everything, but you need to do it in a way that actually makes fiscal sense, as well as that you can maintain it and actually leverage that data. So I think, I guess that's what I would summarize monitoring versus observability is more around that what versus why, and then how you achieve it.
Definitely. That's a great point. I think that's a major factor for a lot of organizations, right? Is balancing cost management with the amount of information that they can gather. And from a personal standpoint, I always think about, I kind of also think about monitoring. You have kind of like basic metrics like CPU utilization, uh, disk utilization and stuff like that. But then observability is adding kind of like a dimension of, well, what does that mean for the customers of our application? What does that mean for the business impact when CPU utilization and that kind of observability gives you that additional information on how those basic monitoring metrics might be impacting the business. Thanks a lot for y'all's answers.
I think that people just get used to what they know. I might know that I need 5 different tools and execute these 20 different commands to check the performance of my application, but new people coming in, not so much. That's the steep learning curve. If your observability practices rely on institutional knowledge, then that's a sign that something needs to change. Now, how do you actually change this? It can be hard for new people to speak up and call out the toil when new people join a team. It's the golden opportunity to reflect on team practices, and it's critical for optimizing team health and performance. Other than that, I don't know, maybe enough people need to get burnt out and enough fires need to be lit for things to change.
That's interesting. So you kind of see some of the larger challenges more so a cultural, if it's not broke, don't fix it, kind of ideology that you have to change, and rather than just a technical challenge to be solved.
Totally. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll throw in two more that I've kind of experienced in, dealing it with not only my personal experience, but also interacting with customers of all different shapes and sizes. And I think the first one is around deploying services without observability or monitoring in mind, and then having to retroactively implement it on those services. And a lot of the reason for that is like as you're deploying the new latest and greatest thing, there's hype around it, there's focus on it, there's people that are actively working on it, and if you can move your observability insights left into that process, then when they get deployed, they're already observable. And then it's a little bit of cleanup, right? Nothing done right the first time. And another one that I deal with, or unfortunately, I face all too many times, is like email distribution of alerts. The reality is, one of the ways that you make your observability service viable to the organization is you need to instill confidence that it's doing what it's doing. And if you've got one of these things, it's so overwhelming. It's always screaming wolf. I never know when to trust it. These are like the anti-patterns for effective observability. And email alerting doesn't drive accountability. It really is just an annoyance, and it causes this excuse kind of a culture around not supporting observability. So being very careful around when you notify someone, making sure that it's notifiable and using your notification mechanisms in the most appropriate way. If you're testing, don't blow up someone's pager, don't blow up someone's email box, just throw them in the console, use them in your non-production environments, and make sure that you understand like that's people's lives, their freedom, their free time that you're interacting with or messing with. So I think email alerts is a common pain in a lot of organizations.
I totally agree. I've had experienced the same thing in past organizations where, you have just like so many alerting, and then you create like a dedicated folder in your email inbox, and you just redirect all alerts going to that folder, right? And you never look at that folder because they aren't meaningless. Totally agree. Those alerts should be meaningful if you're getting an email, and getting eyes on it.
I've been lucky enough to work at companies that create time and space for research and innovation. So whenever we identified a need for something like improved observability practices, we had carved out hours to research observability products, build out POCs, and bring that back to the teams to demonstrate the value. At that point, it was a team and company decision. So how will we take this to implement to the team? What are the business costs, developer hours? What will we gain from implementing this tool? Just like when deciding which metrics to collect, what's the return on investment for our observability practice?
Gotcha. Thank you. And when you implemented proof of concepts for like a particular tool, was it always like open source tooling, like free tooling, or did you implement proof of concepts with vendors like Splunk, for instance?
Yeah, we tried out different vendors and just had some time to research different ways of doing things, thankfully. And it was a team effort. So everybody brought their own POCs together and shared it with the whole entire engineering team.
Very cool. Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I think if I recall, the question was, it's challenging to choose the right observability tools, and what's the approach to rationalization, right? And I think a lot of it comes to future-proofing your observability strategy. So a lot of times we see organizations, they go through this challenge like I described with some of my past life, where you have brick and mortar on-premise stuff, and then you need to modernize that and move it to cloud microservices. And a lot of times the reality is the tools that you were using for on-prem are not suitable to ephemeral environments in the cloud and microservices. So making sure that you're looking forward at what are the services and technologies we as a business are doing, and make sure that your tools align with them and are scalable to meet those needs. From my perspective, in my former role, it was around the reality is to maintain tools effectively takes time and resources. And the reality is, if you take those same time and resources and more focus them obtaining value from the tool instead of configuring it, maintaining the back end. So I prefer SaaS-based solutions where they're appropriate and applicable, because it kind of takes that administrative stuff off. And now you're really more focused on, how do I deliver this observability and bring that value to the business? I think you're a lot closer to IT alignment and business alignment when you do that. Tools rationalization, in my experience, it really comes down to fundamentals like cost. So if something's costing a lot of money, it's time to reassess it. And in addition, like when I first started my career in like 2008 in observability and monitoring, the approach was best of breed. There was a lot of vendors that provided niche visibility into a certain technology stack. And so we implemented those because it was best of breed. It was bundled with the software. But now the game has really changed. And now there are, observability leaders have the ability to provide broad insights across a vast number of technologies. And while it may not provide the depth of that engineering specific tool, you really should consider having 80% of the requirements, but a more centralized approach and single tool where you can deal with other challenges like adoption, getting everybody familiar with it, common access and maintenance and those type of things. I think there is a lot of value in there. And then for the final question, I think you asked around, how do you assess the value of the observability? It ultimately comes down into those key buzzwordy metrics, MTTR, right? If you see your MTTR decreasing or it's not increasing, you're doing a good job. Another one as an observability leader I like to use was adoption. And that really comes in like, how many people are using the tool? When are they using the tool, and understanding that? And then when you implement things to drive adoption, like more training, partner with vendors on how to do that. There's a lot of training like on Splunk.com and a lot of the articles we're putting together on how to use the products, right? And so making sure people are using that and then tracking to see if that actually changes the game.
Gotcha. Thank you. And just a quick question. Did you have any kind of standardized way of tracking adoption, like any standardized metrics or technical tooling that would help you track adoption for any number of tools?
Yeah, in the past, like we would, partner with our SaaS vendors to get some insights around that. But additionally, we always used SSO for all of our stuff. So that was a core requirement, a core security requirement around any tool, observability included. One of the benefits that we had is we had Splunk monitoring that from a security use case, and we were able to use those same logs to determine utilization. So when a user logs in, we know the user, we can quickly tie that back to their organization and get that organizational insight through data that, quite honestly, we already had in our Splunk platform.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, standardizing observability around specifications, protocols, conventions, and a single set of APIs. It creates a space where no matter how our stacks evolve, no matter where our engineers go or come from, they can speak the same observability language. Basically, for organizations, this means more reliable, resilient, performant applications and happier customers. I mean, we wouldn't want a world where different engineers at different companies learn and have their own versions of the Python language or language X. So why would we want that for observability?
Right. Definitely having kind of a standardized way to talk about observability and OTel. And you're saying that OTel kind of enables that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Mike?
Yeah, I'd +1 on everything that y'all just talked through. And in addition, I think one of the big takeaways, and when we talk, just to kind of go beat those war drums a little bit more on rationalization, one of the biggest challenges around rationalization is like proprietary agent implementation. And so the reality is that what rationalization is teaching organizations is that change is inevitable. There's going to be a time where we need to get with it and get hip, right? And when you have an agent or like the hotel collector who's really positioned for this long-term strategy around data ownership and data sovereignty, I control where my data goes. What that means is now you're having that more value-based observability conversation than the tooling and telemetry, because it should and it will be largely acceptable and compliant with most of the major observability vendors. And so now it's a matter of who do I swing my data to? How do I store it effectively? How do I make sure I meet my regulatory and regulatory compliance requirements? And I think that vendor agnostic aspect of OTel is pretty critical because it's again, you can switch not on a dime, but generally speaking, you can switch those exporters over relatively quickly and send that to a new or different observability backend that really is value based. So I think that's the biggest thing around OTel for me.
Definitely. So OTel gives a lot of flexibility to people to pivot when they need to different vendors, still based on a standardized language, basically.
Yeah, I think it ultimately it's coming down from those niche players really kind of dissolving or be staying as niche players and more observability leaders coming together to provide comprehensive observability. So whether that's infrastructure monitoring, application performance monitoring, DIM capabilities, which include like synthetics and looking to a really vendors and solutions and partners, right? Strategic partners, like we talked about earlier, that are really positioned to provide holistic observability, not just a checkbox saying that we do it, but actually providing that into a single platform. I think we're going to see a lot more consolidation. With that consolidation will come additional value, additional insights from more and more people using it, only making those products and solutions that much better. I'm personally passionate about event analytics, and I think that the AI hype that's going on right now, I see that there's a ton of opportunity with event analytics and like leveraging AI to better understand how are disparate distributed things, how are they interrelated and telling us summaries of things that we can probably come up with, but not nearly as quick as asking the machine, right? So I think AI's influence and observability is going to be a hot topic. I think there's a lot of stuff. I've been to a lot of conferences. It's a topic top of mind for a lot of organizations. And observability is going to take it's going to be an accelerator, a multiplier as it relates to observability value.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the same question I was going to ask you about, specifically AI and machine learning. Do you see any specific advancements, or are you looking towards any specific advancements that are powered through AI in observability that you see coming?
Yeah, so like some of them I probably did mention a little bit there. Sorry about that. But at the end of the day, we Splunk have some AI assistants that are either available today or in private preview that we're getting ready to release. And that's everything from dealing with like adoption challenges, right? There's a lot of power in a lot of these tools, but if you don't know how to use it, then it's not very powerful. And so we have AI assistants, for example, in the platform that enable like a new operator to come on and really be able to ask questions of the data that you, quite frankly, were being asked. Like, well, what changed in the security group? How do you know that it happened? When did it happen? And you're able to interact with the system and get that detail back. In addition, like if you look at our observability cloud offering with AI, now this is around like what I talked about earlier, and that's let me ask a question. I see something's wrong, right? Like I'm aware that there's a problem. Now, can you help me understand that? By the tool understanding those standard processes and approaches to look for data, it's going to accelerate that quicker and bring back those insights. So it's really more, you're asking a question, it's going to come back with anything. And like if you're like me on any other AI or chat GPT utilization, you always trust but validate. And so it gives you that. And the good news is I've had a lot of hands-on exposure to our AI assistants, and I'm actually super pleased with the level and accuracy of those results that's coming out of it. Very detailed insights, giving you things and telling you things that, again, even someone like myself who's had a lot of experience and exposure in the product, it's telling things quicker than I would do it. And I think it's going to make a lot more, like it's going to be Ollie for everyone, right? So everyone's going to become an expert. And I think that's exciting.
Absolutely. I've been pretty impressed, especially when you uh, doing things like parsing through logs, right? I mean, you just can't really compete with an AI. It's able to parse through logs a lot faster than you are if you're trying to troubleshoot something. And so far, I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen. Thanks for that answer, Mike.
Be the change. Don't manually feed messages through a queue at 2 a.m. because that's how it's always been done. POC some unified observability solutions to get some insight into root causes and resolve issues before they start.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. I totally agree as well.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I maybe I'm a graybeard, but I came back in the time of waterfall delivery, right? And so it was always this big bang approach. And one of the things I've learned throughout my observability career is that observability and achieving great observability is a journey, and it's going to take time. And one of the biggest things that happens is you'll get hype, and then you'll get people excited about it. Oftentimes, unfortunately, as it relates to failure, right? Like, how can we never let this happen again? And so that's when you drive that innovation. And I'd encourage my old self to be more iterative in what you bring, and then, champion that value that you're bringing. And ultimately, not only the value, but the things that you're correcting. Hey, we didn't do this the way we should have or we could have. And being transparent about that, I think it develops trust and a lot around, leading those observability practices and getting them mature is more about being ingrained with the business, ensuring that you have trust, and transparency goes a long way as it relates to that. And then I think iterative delivery, I learned about agile development later in my career, and it was a requirement of my old role. But I wish I would have learned that earlier and just been more iterative, be prioritized as I deliver, and then not try to boil the ocean and understand that it's never done, right? It's always a moving target. It's always an evolving masterpiece.
Right. Always striving forward with continuous improvement. Awesome. Thanks a lot for those answers, and thanks for joining Mike and Caitlin. Really appreciate the time that you took to speak with me today, and I hope our viewers enjoyed our fireside chat as well. So thanks everyone, and thank you for watching.
Thanks, Moss. See ya.
Thanks, Moss.
Bye.